Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Legion Alpha. We're looking at the Retribution Paladin. Good God, beware, beware. If you saw my quick look in the very early stages of the Alpha, you will know that I blasted the spec into the ground. I was like, holy shit, this is bad. This is really, really bad. They needed to do something dramatic with it. As they have done something pretty dramatic with it, I think it is well worth revisiting this now, as we're getting pretty close to how this spec is going to play. And there's a lot of talent switches and stuff coming up, but changing the fundamentals of the spec? Probably not. Probably not. So now's a good time to actually get in depth of it and sort of appease those who may be very worried their Ret Paladin is going to suck balls, because I gotta tell you, it does not. It does not suck balls at all now. It's actually quite interesting and fun and fluid, which it was not in the initial incarnation. Now, they've undergone huge amounts of changes. I generally drop in and drop out of my Ret Paladin every now and again. I've deleted him a couple of times, come back to it, seen if there's any changes, gone away from it again, and ultimately been kind of left going, ugh. It's not quite there yet, but the recent incarnation and the changes that I've played with as of recent, I would say I'm about 10 hours deep in this. Now, that might not seem as in depth as the other specs that I play, where I generally put a minimum of 12 in, but considering I played it so little in its early incarnation, because honestly, I couldn't tolerate it. I would level it and be like, I just can't tolerate the spec, it's so bad. The vast majority of that playtime over the weekend has actually just been recently with the latest build. So with that said, let's get into it. What are the core fundamental mechanics? Let me actually switch out my talents here so this makes more sense. We'll just go all the way down here and I'll explain why I'm doing that later. We have general usage stuff that we've seen before. We have some nice holy power generators, and then our spenders still remain. So we have Templar's Verdict, we have Judgment, we have Crusader Strike, we have Divine Storm, and we have our artifact ability, which will be the Wake of Ashes, which comes from, of course, the Ashbringer. There she is. And we have a new ability called the Blade of Justice that generates 2 holy power, which kind of offsets the fact that Judgment isn't a holy power generator. It, in fact, does something else. So those are your basic go-to fundamental mechanics. Now, as you can see, our bars are pretty goddamn full. What we have here is a spectacular light show in keeping with everything we know about the Paladin. It should be a light show. It should be very, very interesting to play, and that's what you're going to get. So your basic core fundamental is going to be using Blade of Justice, which is a wonderful animation, by the way. Using everything else, and then you're going to actually debuff your target, as you can see here. So this is part of the new play style-ish of the Ret Paladin. Is when you cast a Judgment, you gain this debuff, which is taking 67% increased damage from the Paladin's holy power consuming abilities. So Judgment is similar to, what's the word? Colossus Smash. Okay? It's very similar to Colossus Smash in terms of you want to debuff the target, then you want to drop your finisher. You can see I get a 78k Templar's Verdict from that, but if I do it without casting a Judgment, it's a measly 50k. Boo and a hiss. Okay, boot and a hiss. So that's some part of the gameplay you're going to want to keep in mind. Now, you'll notice that everything here is affected by haste, which means long-term, you'll be keeping this debuff for a hell of a long time. But in the early stages of playing your Ret Paladin, you'll absolutely be aware that Judgment works this way. This is also why Blade of Justice generates 2 holy power, because you are purely invited to actually delay your Judgment a couple of seconds until you get the ball rolling and you can actually dump some finishes into that debuff window. Okay? Our Wake of Ashes, then, which is our extra ability that we'll get baseline, is in fact just a DPS spell. Now, they've changed this a few times. Originally, this is just an AoE spell. I'll pop it for you now. Yeah, it's lacking a little bit of guts at the moment. So originally it was a targeted spell. You could cast it over there if you wish to, and it had a much slower animation. It didn't have the sound effect yet. What they've done now is changed it to very similar to the Fury of Odin, which is the Fury Warrior artifact ability, which does a huge AoE, but they've sped up the animation. Also, the Ashbringer that falls down from the sky has become very, very small. Now, I would say, I mean, this is purely a kind of non-issue because this isn't a gameplay thing, but they really need to beef this animation up so it's at least on par with Fury of Odin. Fury of Odin is very, very satisfying when you press it. It does a huge whirlwind effect. The sound effect is fucking awesome. These are all things that can be tweaked, and you can see they are working on that as it's changed so dramatically. But in essence, it doesn't generate holy power. Oh, it generates 5 holy power. Excuse me for saying that. It's an AoE spell that generates 5 holy power. So every 1 minute, you can instantly generate 5 holy power with that. Now, 5 holy power. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Does that mean Seraphim's back? No, it doesn't mean Seraphim's back, but an ability similar to Seraphim does actually exist. I will point out that some of the things we've seen as they've tried to fix the Ret Paladin from its initial very, very tedious, awful incarnation. We even saw Inquisition return for a very brief period of time. You might notice that I had a spell here on Shift 1, and that was Seal of Light. Seal of Light in the last build was actually Inquisition, the old school Inquisition. They just renamed it Seal of Light, increasing your haste. And haste is going to be a huge, huge prominent factor of the Ret Paladin, because as you can see, everything's affected by haste. The debuff windows, the holy power generation, all affected by haste because you get to do them much more. So that's something you need to bear in mind, that this spec will go incredibly fast when it actually gets some gear behind it. Yeah, this thing's going to go fucking quick, real quick. We still have Avenging Wrath. Increases all damage and healing dealt by 35%. Is it the most interesting cooldown in the world? No. Does it work? Yes. I would love for it to do something a little bit more than just flat damage increase, but it is what it is, and it still looks awesome, and therefore you can read into that as what you want. So let's talk about blessings for the moment. Blessings are the big fucking scary moment for the Ret Paladin right now. As much as the gameplay's fine, this is the real bummer. So you get 3 greater blessings. You get the greater blessing of wisdom, which regenerates mana for whoever you cast it on. The greater blessing of kings, which reduces the damage someone takes by giving them a shield that'll just keep regenerating itself. And the greater blessing of might, which increases the DPS. Now, some logs have shown that Greater Blessing of Might is an enormous, enormous boost to DPS for certain specs. You may note that the bottom of the tooltip is you may only have 3 Greater Blessings active at one time. This is basically DI, or Dark Intent, and I suggest you watch the Legacy of the Warlock video to know our feelings on that, and I'm ultra surprised they have brought a system back like this back in. So solo play, not a big deal. You're going to put at least these 2 up, so you have a shield, and you have the 10% increased damage. The question will come when you're in group play, challenge modes, or even just a raid, is who the fuck is getting these buffs? That is a very, very big question indeed. And one has to wonder whether Ret Paladin DPS of its own will suffer because they're going to increase the DPS of their party members. That is something you always have to bear in mind. If this spec brings to the table not only its own DPS, but increases the DPS of other players as well, is the DPS of this character going to suffer as a result of that? Because you are always going to be providing this extra boost to your party. That is something you need to bear in mind. So slight changes then. We have Shield of Vengeance now, a 2-minute cooldown. This is your defensive, okay? Damage absorbed is dealt as holy damage divided across all enemies, so it actually does some damage, which makes it pretty interesting. And we also got the Hand of Light, which you place a hand on an enemy target, healing you for 3% of the maximum health each time the target takes damage. Very, very nice as a little defensive measure, and also for leveling. Only a 1-minute cooldown on that, so that's actually really nice. We still get Bubble, though, so don't panic there. Now, you'll probably notice things like Consecration are on my bars, and what is this funky spell, this Holy Wrath, and all that. So let's get into the talents, shall we? Now, the original idea, Blizzard's design philosophy, I think this is important for you guys to know, is that they absolutely do not want, under any circumstances, players to need a guide or a calculator to work out which talent is best for them. So the way they've decided to do this is probably the realistic solution, honestly, is that some spells do AoE, and some spells do single target, and therefore if you're AoEing, you probably want the AoE ones. Now, the Ret Paladin is the epitome of this philosophy. It absolutely is. What you'll see all down the right-hand side is talents that do AoE damage. So Consecration exists, Zeal exists, which increases your haste and causes you to cleave. Divine Hammer means that your Blade of Justice now actually does AoE damage, and so on and so forth. Okay, so these 3 talents, this was like 5 talents originally, all do AoE damage. So we have lost Mass Judgment. Some people might be pissy about that, although the real mechanic of it is when you press Judgment, instead of it hitting one target, it hit all of them. I will say, and I have to point this out, as boring as that is, because it did nothing for your gameplay, the actual animation of all those Judgment Hammers falling onto targets was actually really cool. And I would like to see that as a proc or something. That would be kind of interesting, to make Judgment a little bit more, just because I know that animation exists. I would like to see that animation, I'll be honest with you, Blizzard. I did not like the Mass Judgment talent, as it was really silly that it did literally nothing to the gameplay at all, but still, it looked cool. And I'll be the first to say, sometimes things look cool enough that they're kind of worth sacrificing fun for because it looks awesome. The Ret Paladins have always done that for me. Sometimes I'll go, this talent isn't great. Like, Avenging Wrath isn't great. I mean, it's just a flat damage increase. But it looks cool, right? It looks really cool. So I'm not going to be the guy to say that it's looking cool. If it looks really, really cool, it can offset the fact that the talent might not be as interesting as we would like. So, having said that, let's go through the talents then. We have Final Verdict, which you guys probably know all about. It increases the damage done by your Templar's Verdict and Divine Storm by 20%. Something to note there. Execution Sentence makes it back in. Okay, it's a single target sort of nuke. It costs 3 holy power, though. Something to bear in mind. It's not free at all. So, whether or not that'll offset and need a calculator for these two, we'll have to wait and see. I would absolutely imagine it's only an 18-second cooldown. It is affected by haste. You can see it's at 18.1 for me right now. That potentially Final Verdict in conjunction with the Judgment debuff and stuff. I mean, Execution Sentence gets the benefit of it, but whether or not it'll be as nice, I don't know. I mean, this is kind of the questions that Blizzard doesn't want you to be asking yourself, is which one is better? Now, it might be that the question comes down to, will you occasionally be using Divine Storm, in which case Final Verdict will be better. If you're going straight up single target throughout the fight, then Execution Sentence should be better. Perhaps that's what they're hoping you will think, but we'll have to wait and see. Or, of course, Consecration. So if you're doing constant AoE, Consecration is where you're going to go. I will say one annoying factor of this, which I hope they change, they had this right at some point. You'll notice that if I spec Consecration, it lights up, yeah? I can see my Consecration there on the bar. If I spec Execution Sentence, you can see it brings the spells to the bar and puts it on a different key binding. Now, what we found is that on certain specs, the game will intuitively know that you can't possibly have Consecration if you have Execution Sentence, so it replaces Consecration instead. Because obviously, you just want these on the same key binding. Yeah? Because they work in the same tier. You can't have both of these at the same time. It's a very, very minor gameplay issue, but it is an issue. Especially with the speed that we are respecking, and certainly in speedruns and stuff. I've been doing a couple, for some information for you, I've been doing some heroics as fast as possible with a couple of groups, which has been sort of interesting, setting up for how challenge modes might work. That's what those guys were thinking. And this kind of functionality is really annoying. So what I ended up doing was making a macro that was cast Consecration, cast Execution Sentence. So I didn't care where the game dropped the button for me. That wasn't what I was interested in. What I was interested in is that it was on the same key binding without me having to sort of click down here and drag it over there again, and then vice versa when I switched back to Consecration. Minor gameplay note there. Level 30, we still see remnants of this initial incarnation that I talked about earlier. So, Fist of Justice, your Crusade Strike has a 25% chance to cause your next Holy Spanner to cost one less Holy Power. So, occasionally, you will get a debuff, which means, yeah, you can cast Templar's Verdict at 2 instead of 3, or Divine Storm at 2 instead of 3, or vice versa, anything that costs 5, which I will get to cost 4. But the original version of this was just speeding up Crusader Strike because it was on such a long cooldown. Now you can see Crusader Strike actually naturally carries 2 charges now. But then they still have Crusader's Flurry. This was again to speed up the spec because initially they knew full well the Ret Paladin was ultra slow. Like crazy slow, guys. Watch the quick look and you'll see how ridiculously slow this spec was. So for people who wanted faster gameplay, they came up with Crusader's Flurry, which means that in the new system, this feels a little out of place. So what it does is it gives you 3 charges of Crusader Strike that do offset the damage that having 2 charges would do. So it's a very, very minor gameplay change just to speed up the spec. Honestly, it doesn't need it right now. This spell feels a little lost in the wilderness right now in terms of usefulness. Zeal, on the other hand, simply makes your Crusader Strike change to something that generates 5% haste, which means you will see if I spec to Zeal, if I get up to 3 charges, you can see I'm increasing my haste by 10%, and one more will give me the 15% haste. And you'll see that all the cooldowns and stuff of everything have changed. You can see Judgment is now 9.46 seconds instead of over 10 seconds as it was. So that's quite nice. The haste is the interesting part. The other part of it, of course, is that it will causing Zeal attacks to chain to additional nearby targets. So you get some cleave along with that. So if you're going to be cleaving, you're going to want to take Zeal. But the main interesting part for me is the haste and how that affects all the other spells. Because every time you increase your haste, that really changes the gameplay dynamics. And that's cool. That's what we'd like to see from secondary stats, is gaining it actually makes a difference. Not something you'll often see with things like Mastery. Like, gaining more mastery doesn't change gameplay at all. It's just doing its job in the background, similar with versatility, whereas haste has an obvious effect on how the spec plays. We have some CC at the next tier, not interested in that. So at level 60, we have Virtue's Blade, which Blade of Justice critical strikes now deal 3 times normal damage, a completely RNG aspect. How will crit play to Ret? I don't know. So that is just a passive RNG, it will do more damage sometimes type ability. Blade of Wrath then replaces the Blade of Justice with something with a 12-yard range, and it strikes an enemy with the Blade of Wrath, dealing 8,000 holy damage and generating 2 holy damage. 2 holy power, I should say. And that just gives it a little bit more consistency. Okay, so you can see here, Blade of Justice has a 12-yard range as well, about a 10.9 second cooldown. Blade of Wrath has a 7-second cooldown. So you get it more regularly and more consistently, which kind of lends me to believe that Blade of Wrath is more go-to until we get maybe random amounts of crits, or perhaps a trinket with a lot of critical strike creating on it. We'll have to wait and see. because obviously 3 times normal damage is pretty fucking juicy. Let's be honest here. Or you have the AoE one, and you'll have to remember that a lot of these spells just transfer to the AoE spell, which changes your Blade of Justice to the Divine Hammer. You've maybe seen this effect before. The hammers just spin around and they do AoE damage. You can see it there. And that's literally all it is, okay? It'll just do AoE damage to it. Generate 1 holy power instead of 2, but we obviously get all the haste benefits of Zeal, so we naturally generate more holy power. So there's a lot of synergy going between speccing into AoE, so that's okay. At level 75, then, we start to get a little bit more interesting. Okay, a little bit more interesting in the choices we make. So you have Word of Glory, which is heal yourself and up to 5 friendly targets within 12 yards for 80,000 with a maximum of 2 charges, yeah? And it costs 3 holy power, but it will heal your group, which is something interesting. Not that that's something we particularly want to do as a DPS, but any enhancement shaman will tell you that dropping Healing Rain every now and again is a pretty big fucking deal, and it can make a big difference. Eye for an eye, the old school warrior retaliation. Hello, hello, warriors sob into your crying soup. Boo-hoo. Reduces your physical damage taken by 35%, which is always a plus. Very cool on a 1-minute cooldown. But it also instantly counterattacks an enemy that strikes you in melee for 20,000 physical damage, yeah? Okay, lasts for 10 seconds. It ain't bad, guys. You see, it even has the old retaliation animation. Yeah, almost just to rub it in on the old warriors there. So you'll get the 35% damage reduction and also counteract enemies. I will say this is okay for leveling, without question. Perhaps compared to Justica's Vengeance. We'll talk about it in a second. But in the long term, does this pay off for a capped Ret Paladin? This seems more PvP based for me than anything else. I would probably like to see it over in the honor talent system that we have here, which I'm not covering in today's video. Justica's Vengeance then. 5 holy power. What? Seraphim, what? Okay. Relax. So, Justica's Vengeance is an extra spell that you can add to your bars, and it has some creative uses. It's a weapon strike that deals 42,000 damage, which is only slightly more than a Templar's Verdict for 2 extra holy power, which makes you think that ain't worth casting. The interesting part is, of course, it deals 100% additional damage and healing when it is used against a stunned target. Now, that doesn't mean you have to stun them. This makes this ability very cool in heroics and stuff. Oh, yes, it does. Because not only are you going to be setting this up alongside your Hammer of Justice, but you're going to be watching. Have the warriors just shockwaved something? Are these mobs stunned by an outside means? Have they been shadow furied or whatever? When that happens, you're like, ooh. So this means that in 5 rounds, you have plenty of opportunity outside of your own control to actually drop a Justica's Vengeance. And as you should be floating at least 2 holy power anyway as a Ret Paladin, it's not particularly difficult to get up to 5. That is only 1 divine... let me get out of that spell. 1 Blade of Justice, which generates 2. And it's 1 attack with a Crusader Strike or a Zeal to actually get to 5 at that point, which means you can very quickly react and use a Justica's Vengeance, which kicks a lot of arse. Very awesome. Very, very awesome. So, cool talent, like it. Divine Intervention. How my fucking cock shifted in my pants when I read this. I was like, no way are they bringing back Divine Intervention. And I suggest you look at the Legacy of the Paladin for know what the original Divine Intervention does. No, not really. Unfortunately. So it reduces the cooldown of Divine Shield by 50%. In addition, any attack that should kill you instead reduces you to 20% of your maximum health and triggers Divine Shield. Cauterize anybody without the nasty side effects? Yes. It cannot occur while Divine Shield is on cooldown or Forbearance is active. Okay, so Forbearance is caused by things like Lay on Hands now, okay? Your hand spells don't actually cause Forbearance. So your Blessing of Freedom... well, these are called blessings again. Blessing of protection and so on don't cause... Oh, blessing of protection does, excuse me. But yeah, you can use other things. But if you have forbearance, Divine Intervention ain't going to work, which is okay in a raid environment, that's fine. But it's also in the same tree as Divine Steed, which is awesome. It's so cool. It's the movement speed increase for the Ret Paladins, because you can use it inside. Now, I will say it's usable indoors or in combat. Yeah, you can use this while you're fighting, and no doubt in the future, in your raids, you're going to see the old Ret Paladin riding across the fucking plains while you're chugging along going, boo, I wish I had something anywhere near as cool as Divine Steed. It is absolutely awesome. Doesn't have the damage prevention that the prot paladins get, but who cares? That's not what it's for. We have other choices for that as a Ret Paladin. It is your gap closer, whatever you want to do. It's a 1-minute cooldown. bear that in mind. That's exactly what it is. But honestly, I've had no problems with it. The only issue so far is they haven't managed to get it work in every dungeon. So you'll go into some dungeons and it just won't work. And that's really sad because it's so cool. Even when I don't need it, I want to cast it. If I'm being honest. And Seal of Light is back in. As 3 holy power, it draws from your holy energy to increase your movement speed by 20% for 1 minute. So if you're moving a hell of a lot, right, in some gauntlet type event or whatever, the Seal of Light is going to be fine. Sacrificing 1 Templar's Verdict to do this is more than fine. That's okay, considering it lasts a whole minute. That's not bad. It's not bad, and I think that's a fair compromise. I really do. Every minute you have to refresh this. That's not that bad. It really isn't. I'm sure some people will still say that is awful, terrible, I hate it, but honestly, it ain't that bad. Then we move into our level 100s, which are the most out of place talents in the whole tree. The whole tree. So we have a quality, not the Hearthstone one. 5-minute cooldown. Now, another side point here that I want to point out is that due to the nature of Legion, we swap talents all the fucking time, especially when we're going to get into the challenge modes. 5-minute cooldowns are a real problem, because that means we can't really use them, because if I take this 5-minute cooldown, that means for the next 5 minutes of my challenge mode, I'm not going to be able to use Holy Wrath or Blessing of Justice, because it won't let me swap out, and that 5-minute hindrance is fucking awful, really bad. Either way, it deals holy damage to up to 3 enemies within 10 yards, these are 100% of your missing health. Right, so based on the damage you've taken, damage reduced against enemy players cannot be used if you have Forbearance. Yeah, very, very weird talent in the PvE-ish scenario where you're relying on the fact that you've lost health for it to work, to get the most out of it. So it's so strange. It's so strange. I don't want to cast it right now and show you. I'll use it in the dungeon that follows this sort of introduction. So you can actually see that where I can afford to sit around for 5 minutes. Let's do Blessing of Justice first then. The passive one, for those people who don't want to add more buttons, which is fine. Increase the effectiveness of your greater blessings by 100%. I really hope this doesn't turn into the you have to take this, because it also affects other players. This should just have the wording on you. Increase the effect of your greater blessings by 100% on you. So people aren't like, dude, you need to take that because you're giving me fucking greater blessing of might, or can you please take this? Because we also have Holy Wrath, which originally was the very strange one we had in the first incarnation, because it was a really long cast, right? And it was like a casted Holy Bolt spell that feels really like a Holy Paladin. But they've changed it a little bit now. So it fires Holy Bolts at the target, causing 35,000 holy damage, not the best, and generating 5 holy power over 2 seconds. Yeah? And that is with my mediocre haste. Here it is. Whee! Pew, 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 pew. Now, as you can see, that's with my really mediocre haste. It ain't that bad. What you'll have to decide, though, is whether that 5 holy power is worth the loss of a couple of global cooldowns in terms of the damage they deal. Blade of Justice alone deals 32,000 damage, yeah? Crusader Strike does 9,700 damage, and that's not including a Judgment, which does 22,000 damage. So you have to bear in mind how this is going to mathematically work. I'm sure they've balanced it, though, so it makes sense. And every 2 minutes, you have another 5 holy power generator to go alongside. If I get rid of that, to go alongside the Ashbringer. Boo! Which also generates 5 holy power. So you have all these extra ways of generating holy power like as big chunks, which makes the spec play really fluidly. It adds so much to it that I actually do not mind at all playing the Ret Paladin right now. I think it's really cool. Honestly, I've had a lot of fun with it now compared to its first incarnation. I really have had a lot of fun with it. There's lots of choices to be made. You want to manage. The fact that you have to manage your judgment, just that little bit, makes it way more interesting. It does make it way more interesting. It has the graphical light show that we've always liked out of the Ret Paladin. Plenty of ways. You see, I can always fit at least 2 finishes into my judgment and then go back to holy power building and making correct choices there. I want to delay that judgment for 1 global because I'm going to fill my holy power, and that's going to allow me to do 2 finishes in there nicely without wasting too much time, which has always been a staple of the Ret Paladin for a long time. We don't want to spend our holy power as soon as we get 3. We want to think about when to use it. A judgment does a fine job of making that work, and that actually works out really nicely for me. I think they've done a solid job here. The talents are keep going to shift a little bit, but generally speaking, I can kind of get behind we have certain talents for AoE, and the fact that those talents now actually change up the gameplay a little bit. Consecration you do want to think about, because if the tank's moving around a lot and your Consecration isn't getting the benefit, it doesn't follow you around, as you can see. We don't have the glyph system to make that happen, then that makes a lot of sense. Where Zeal gives us the extra haste on top of just cleaving, which makes it more interesting because it speeds up everything else. Divine Hammer is the weakest. Obviously, it's just a flat AoE spell, which follows us around, but ultimately, the rest of the stuff works out just fine. So, with that being said, let's take a quick look at the Ashbringer itself. I think I'd be amiss not to point out here, and this is something that's a message that's being spread pretty much throughout the community. Now, it is entirely subjective. It is entirely subjective, and you might think you're wrong. I would suggest you don't get angry and cry about that. What I'd say is that's just your opinion, and that's okay. But the Ashbringer has been one of the most poorly received artifact weapons so far in Legion. Why? It has a history that predates everything we know about Legion, and that history is very, very, very cool. The Ashbringer that we get is nowhere near as cool as we would probably hoped, and I think a lot of Ret Paladins now, after actually spending some time, and remember, if you've never played Legion Alpha at all, and you're just like looking forward to an Ashbringer, try and get into this mindset. Once you've used this thing for a little while, you start to think, I really wish this wasn't the Ashbringer, and it was just something else, because it kind of messes with the lore a hell of a lot for those guys who are interested in that. That we're using an Ashbringer and it's kind of weak sauce. And when you do start seeing a lot of Ashbringers around on the server, you do lose the that feeling of imagination and creativity, and perhaps the emphasis you put on Ashbringer personally from a lore perspective. So I will point out that it is being one of the most poorly received artifact weapons for the guys who've actually had some time to play around with it. But that being said, let's look at what it does. So we get the Wake of Ashes, which is what I've showed you. I will point out the Wake of Ashes stuns undead and demons, so that's interesting for Legion. Going to be a lot of demons around. We get the usual stuff, which is just the general balancing of buffing things by 50% and 5% and all that kind of stuff. Nothing particularly going to blow your dick off. That's just the filler tree to get to the good stuff, so to speak. And the Ashes to Ashes there. Judgment has 30% chance to cause 4 weapons of light to smash your target. Now, that's not Mass Judgment like I was talking about earlier. It's just a new animation that comes in. We actually had that animation baseline a couple of builds ago, and I've actually shown that off in the Quick Look, I believe, has that animation in. It's quite cool. You get 4 little hammers that shoot off. And again, all part of the Paladin light show. The fireworks display that is the Paladin. We then get Echo of the High Lord. When you use Templar's Verdict or a Divine Storm, Ashbringer will mimic that action. I can't wait to see this. I haven't played around on the 110 Paladin. By the time I came back to this, they disabled them for PvE. So I haven't done that yet. Whether or not they'll look cool or it'll just simply duplicate the damage, I don't know. Divine Tempest then. Ashbringer causes your Divine Storm to quickly move 20 yards in front of you. Okay. Dealing damage to all enemies in its path, which means it'll actually be like a shockwave style effect. How useful that will be and how much of a hindrance that will be, I don't know. There are many occasions where you do not want to be sending your AoE in a line because that can pull other things, and maybe it just doesn't get the benefit, because if I've got a good tank, then nearly in all occasions my AoE is in one location anyway, inside the death ball that tanks should always be trying to farm. So nothing particularly juicy waiting for you later in the life, okay, of the Ashbringer, but still stuff that we kind of expected to see in terms of perks. You've got to think of the artifact weapons really as just the WOD perks with a bit of a treadmill to run on to actually get there. That's all it is. So in that respect, it's actually fine and dandy. So there you go. That's how it plays, guys. You're going to be doing the usual stuff of generating holy power, spending holy power, with some nice choices as to when to actually jump it, which is nothing too difficult and everything it needs to be. And a lot of other talents that pad things out in a way that are interesting. Fitting in a Holy Wrath is interesting. I always want to use that as 0 holy power. Finding opportunities to use Adjustica's Vengeance is really cool. Getting the haste from Zeal changes the whole thing. I like it. And we also get still the spell animations and stuff of Execution set in its usual way. But instead of it now being the sort of flat 1 minute cooldown, which is nice and stuff, it's something that we nicely spread into our rotation. Now you can see the animation is changed. That again is subjective. I'm trying to ignore things that are entirely subjective. And there you go, you get the other one this time. And yeah, it mixes itself up every now and again. So there you go. That's entirely down to you as to what it looks like. Whether or not it's a bug or not, that'll be for you guys to suggest. Or whether or not that will be the final animations and they'll change up. Who knows? There you go. Alright, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Now, if you don't want spoilers, I suggest you leave now. But if you want to see me kick some ass with this thing and see how it plays out all the way through a dungeon, I suggest you stick around. Thank you. Goodbye. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sticking with me as we get into our gameplay section of the Ret Paladin in Legion. This is generally what you're going to be seeing. Of course, there'll be some changes, no doubt, between now and going live. We will cover them closer to the time, so don't worry. Check back if you're watching this late on. If Legion's about to come out, I've probably done another video on it. Now, what are we going to be doing? So while these guys get set up and do all that, let me explain a few things. There's a few things that I'm going to be doing early on that I'm not going to explain, and that's because I don't want to overwhelm you with stuff, and it's going to seem extremely busy. Now, as we are in the Dark Heart Thicket, I'm probably not going to take too much advantage of it. I'm mainly referring to Justica's Vengeance here. Our main priority is going to be simple. Build Holy Power as a priority. Yeah, pretty standard. We're going to be using this talent setup pretty much throughout a lot of this dungeon. There's not much single targeted Dark Heart Thicket. So we're going to be taking Consecration, which is obviously AoE. We're going to take Zeal, which carries with it some natural cleave. We're going to take Divine Hammer, which is going to be AoE. We're going to take Justica's Vengeance. And for the most part, we're going to take Blessing of Justice. So that means that our first point of getting into a dungeon is this. Buff our men here and give them some big extra deeps, yeah? That's what we're going to be doing. So our priority, as always, is going to be using Divine Hammer and Zeal to generate a lot of holy power. And then we're going to drop a Judgment on the target, which is going to give us the Judgment debuff, which you can think of in many respects like Colossus Smash. Okay? Think of it like Colossus Smash. So when we Judgment the targets, they take 56% increased damage from us, right? So we'll get in a situation like this, interrupt that silence, drop the Judgment, and boom. What we want to do is at least fit in 2 finishers inside the Judgment window. Yeah? We really want to do that. Now, once you get into this, you'll notice that the gameplay itself is very much exactly the same, whether or not we're doing single target or whether we're doing AoE. Because all the Ret Paladin does is swap the buttons that you would ordinarily use single target. So when I take Divine Hammer, it actually replaces my Blade of Justice with the same key binding, yeah? When I take Zeal, it just replaces my Crusader Strike. So our single target sort of rotation, I really don't like that word, it's more of a priority system, works along that sort of idea. I'm pretty sure this thing can't be stunned. Oh, it can be stunned, so now I'm going to do something pretty cool. Boom! We'll talk about that in a little minute. Once we can fit that in, it's all good. It's all good if you can squeeze that in. We can actually do 2 of those back to back if we line it up correctly, which is something I'll be aiming to do. Then we'll get into scenarios like this, and this is where the recharge times and stuff come in handy, is you want to delay your Judgment every now and again to make sure you're getting the most out of it. You get such a huge damage bonus from dropping your finishers. So, Judgment debuff, just to remind you guys, I'm sure most of you have watched the first video. The Judgment debuff actually works for any Holy Power spender, right? Works for any Holy Power spender at all. So whether or not it's a Templar's Verdict, or a Divine Storm, or even an Execution Sentence, which now takes the benefit of being a Holy Power spender, or if it's in fact our Justica's Vengeance here, they will all get the benefit of that. So that's something we need to bear in mind. And then we get these windows like here. I'm going to delay my Judgment just a little bit. I'm sure some math will come out whether or not it's actually worth doing that. I don't know, but for the sake of mechanics, that's how I feel it should be done. And that's exactly what I'm going to do as a result of that. Okay, so now you've got the basics of what you're going to be seeing here. It's going to remain pretty much static throughout most of the dungeon, whether it's single targeting or AoEing. So I will point out that there's definitely an issue with the Rets that has been plaguing me a little bit. And that is that you have to be so specific in your talent choices as to whether you're doing AoE or single target. And if you have moments, like in a 5 minutes, not a big deal. I want to know how this is going to play out in challenge modes, whether this will have huge effects on Rets. But you absolutely feel that if you don't spec into all the things that give you this juicy goodness, yeah? If I don't have Consecration, if I don't have Zeal, if I don't have Divine Hammer, then my AoE is just shockingly bad, essentially. Let's interrupt that silence. We don't like silences. Silences are bad. Would really love to have a Gorfine's Grasp here. Can I go and get this guy? Come on over here, buddy. No, I didn't get it far enough. Let's go drop a Rebuke. There's a Rebuke. Come on. I love the word Rebuke. It's such an awesome word for an interrupt. I mean, it's obviously nothing particularly special. And then in occasions, we're going to be able to do this. We're going to be able to stun a target, we're going to be able to drop a Judgment debuff, and then we're going to be able to fuck him in the face with like that. Which is absolutely awesome. On top of that, what you're going to be seeing, I've been delaying it a little bit until we got to the conversation, is dropping our Ashbringer on targets. Now, dropping our Ashbringer will do a couple of things. One, it's going to really hurt. Yeah, it's going to do a lot of damage. And on top of that, it's also going to potentially stun any demons or undead that are in there and slow them down massively. In fact, it's just a slower stun. I could be wrong here. Yeah, they're stunned for 10 seconds if struck by the Wake of Ashes. It's called Wake of Ashes, but I'm just going to be calling it the Ashbringer. So if you say I'm dropping the Ashbringer, that's what I'm doing. And that's going to give us 5 holy power as well. So what we've got here is a pretty fucking fast spec. Very fast, okay? If you don't like the idea of being global cooldown locked pretty early on in your life cycle of Legion, can I get it? Oh, almost. I was close. Didn't quite get it. So we'll be doing things like spending all our holy power, then dropping an Ashbringer like this, which will then give us another 5. Stun some stuff. Try and keep our Zeal buff up. Obviously, our Zeal is a holy power generator. Yeah. You died? What did you die to? Will you come closer, please? For the love of God. Get in my death ball. Make a death ball tank. Please. Please, Bear. Do a death ball for me. Be a pal. Be a friend of the channel. Come on. Death balls are all about it. Keep interrupting. Be cool. And be a useful member of society. Even though the constant shimmying of these mobs is really getting on my tits. Like, fucking hell, dude. Yeah, this is where you're probably going to notice. I crucially miss Hammer of Wrath. Like, so fucking much. God, I miss Hammer of Wrath. Oh, baby. Do I miss Hammer of Wrath? Just for shit like that, where like mobs are like 10% health, and you just want to like, just fucking throw my hammer in its fucking face. Get smashed in the balls. I also liked Hammer of Wrath because when you've got lower in health, I mean, I can't say I was a huge fan of having Hammer of Wrath like constantly, as you can in WoD. But generally speaking, it's very cool to have a Hammer of Wrath and just get the benefit of that nice range. And when you get lower in health, you always feel like you're getting ever so slightly more powerful. Disorientated. Right, you're gonna get the big hammer. Oh, can I fit it in? Just missed it. Just missed it, unfortunate. Right, let's talk about Blade of Vengeance then. I've got to be trying to set these up. Now, Blade of Vengeance is an attack that costs 5 holy power and does double damage on targets that are stunned, right? Now, what does that mean? It means more than likely, in most scenarios, like especially when you're dealing with multiple mobs, it's not worth using. Okay? I think that's a fair shout to say there. It's probably not worth using. Can we interrupt that? We can't. I can stun these, I'm sure. I want to save my Ashbringer for the boss. There's a boss coming up here. So, generally speaking, I'm thinking that if you have 3 targets, it's not worth using. Compared to just dropping a Divine Storm, because it's going to cost so much holy power. It's not worth using single target unless the target's stunned, so we don't get any benefit of it for bosses, which is a little unfortunate. But I really, really like it. It requires some setup to use, and when you pull it off, it's awesome. It's really cool. You have to think about it a little bit, and if you do it correctly, you can fit 2 things in, because you can build 5 holy power. Let's see if I do it here. You can build 5 holy power. Now, what I want to wait for is Judgment. I want to judge this target, stun it, drop a Hammer of Wrath, and then I would Ashbringer, and I would do it again in the same Hammer of Justice debuff. Right, now we're going to switch to single target. So our single target is going to be Execution Sentence, Fist of Justice, Virtue's Blade. Our annoying factor is we have to drag over Execution Sentence. My macro stopped working. It's not showing me the times. My dog is barking, of course, because every time I film these, the fucking guy turns up with the post. God damn it. Apologies, but it is the nightmare of working at the house, so we'll have to survive that. So let's go ham and see what we can do here. So obviously, if we're going to go ham, first thing we want to do is build up some holy power, yeah? We want to be able to spend some things. Then we're going to do our Judgment debuff. Start spending some holy power. So we're going to drop an Execution Sentence. Then we're going to drop an Ashbringer, which then is going to get us another Templar's Verdict. All within the same Judgment window. Use our amazing, absolutely crucially amazing. Come back! Get an Execution Sentence in there. I'm not sure, and one thing, there's been a little debate over some people testing this, is whether Execution Sentence... Oh, it's reset. Fuck's sake. Whether Execution Sentence, because Execution Sentence has like a travel time, is what we'll call it, yeah? It falls from the sky and falls down. Whether or not that fits into your Judgment windows when you cast it or when it actually lands. I tend to think it's actually when it lands, because I've noticed some very, very alternating results from it. So, we'll go back into here. We're obviously going to prioritize Execution Sentence. Get a Templar's Verdict in there. I mean, it's not a big deal. I mean, all you tend to do is put Execution Sentence first. is all you're going to do. Now, let me show you another ability. So now we're down to 1. I could probably do it. Holy Wrath. That's Holy Wrath, okay? So that gives us 5 holy power straight off the bat. It's a little awkward to use, and you're probably seeing why. It doesn't fit in nicely to Judgment debuffs to get all that extra holy power. The spec is definitely balanced around the idea that you'll get holy power at certain intervals. I could dump this holy power, otherwise I'm going to miss out. No, I'm fine. I'll just drop the Ashbringer, get some more. I wasted 2 holy power there. It's not ideal, but I've run into this scenario because that Holy Wrath has really fucked up my rotation, so to speak, and you can see that happening now. Because you gain that extra holy power, it really throws you out of whack because, like, if I had a load of haste, yeah, we're talking like end game levels of haste, it wouldn't be a problem because my judgment window would be up so much more often, and I'd be more than happy to dump them. But as it is, not really. Which is a bit unfortunate to say the least. Now, you're probably wondering about damage and stuff. Now, this is alpha, so I don't want you to read too much into it. But I do feel like Paladin damage, the actual numbers, are a little undertuned right now because there's so much potential for it to go a little bit absurd. 2 Templar's Verdicts inside that judgment window. Use my shield as we run all the way back. That gap close. I mean, Divine Steed is fantastic, isn't it? Divine Steed is absolutely fantastic. But there's no getting away from the fact that... yeah, 1 minute cooldown on it is a long fucking time, team, isn't it? It's a long fucking time. So we'll take back Zeal now. We'll take back Divine Hammer. Can we take back Blessing of Justice yet? No, we got a little time to wait there. Can I get to Consecration yet? Come on, there we go. So I must remind myself, swap Consecration back to fucking Execution Sentence. I'm sure some people already listened to the first video. I was like, you know what? This is really fucking annoying is that it won't swap that button, even though despite the fact I can't possibly have both. And so it's not that big of a deal. It fucking is. You're swapping talents all the goddamn time in Legion. All the time. And you have to for the reasons I talked about earlier. If you don't have your AoE talents, then your damage is just so much worse. They are so much worse. And that's something you're going to have to bear in mind as you play this. I will say, though, do I think about Judgment as Colossus Smash? No, I don't. I really do not. And the reason for that is, Colossus Smash is, if you've seen any of the ARMS stuff, yeah, I haven't put out a recent ARMS video, admittedly, so maybe you've seen it elsewhere, but Colossus Smash is very random. Like, very fucking random. I'm just going to Templar's Verdict this as we kill it. Very random. And that is crucially annoying, whereas Judgment is so consistent. It is so consistent that it's not a big deal at all. I think we can get rid of this and get Blessing of Justice back. I don't believe I have to recast the Blessings, but I'm going to anyway, if I'm being honest. There we go. Again, prioritizing the Holy Power Spanners. Now, the fact is that Judgment is such a simple idea that I enjoy it because it's consistent. It smooths out it makes the gameplay far more fluid than I expected it to be when I first looked at it. And the changes they've made to the other spells make so much sense now. That you're just thinking about this very little thing. And this is all I ever say when I look at interesting class mechanics, is that I want to think about it. Sometimes I want to delay it. Sometimes I want to extend it. Sometimes I want to go as fast as possible with it. And other effects like Bloodlust, we've got somebody who can do Bloodlust. We've got a Monk, a Druid, and a Hunter. No. Maybe the Hunter. Unlikely, though. I doubt he's playing BM. Whoa, buddy. Oh, now my fucking mount doesn't work. Another crucial bug of the alpha right now is just sometimes you're... Oh, I could do the big one. Boom! Oh, it wasn't as good. When I've been playing on the 110, I'm 103 on this Ret Paladin right now. When I've been on the 110 Paladins, I've seen 250,000. 250,000 plus Justica's Vengeances, and it's been absolutely fantastic. It has been awesome. I might even switch up to Seal of Light here, which is a... if you're not sure, Seal of Light is actually a... Ooh, didn't fit in 2 finishes there. I did a really poorly timed Judgment. And that's what I love! I did a poorly timed Judgment. I didn't squeeze in what I wanted to squeeze in. That's my fault. And I can fix that. That's cool, right? That's something I could work on next time. It's like, you gotta learn to handle that a little bit better. And yeah, you're right. I absolutely do. And that's cool. That means that I have somewhere to go with this spec yet that I'm making those little mistakes. I won't make them often. Probably more times than I recognize if you would watch the gameplay very heavily. But generally speaking, it's not an error I'll make a lot, but it's an error I absolutely want to spend some time working out, so I don't make those errors going forward with my proper gameplay. I absolutely want to do that, and that's all it takes. Not something that we've had with many specs in Legion, is that ability to make some little errors like that, and then be that important. I went in there with 5 holy power, and dropped a spell I didn't need to do. I didn't need to generate more holy power, which led to a waste of holy power. These are all little things that happen every few seconds and keep the gameplay fresh. They keep me learning and keep me getting. Of course, you could use, maybe some add-on will come out like fucking, what was it? What was it called, the add-on that told you exactly what to press on a Ret Paladin? Something Ret, like CLC Ret, that's the one. CLC Ret. Surely an add-on that might exist and come out, and probably will, in fact, that'll just take all this away from you. I encourage you guys not to do that. It's not like Ret is as sort of over the top as it was in its past incarnations, let's say, where even I used CLC Ret for a time, so it was like, it's not worth not doing it because the priorities shift so much. But generally speaking, you only have 2 priorities, which are Divine Hammer and Zeal, so... Or Crusader Strike. Now, the other effect of Zeal, of course, which I like as well, is it increases your haste while you're in AoE scenarios, which means while you're doing more and more flashy damage, because this spec is a fucking fireworks display. Look at all the shit that's going on here. I have hammers spinning around me. I have Consecration down. I'm doing Divine Storms. I mean, the whole thing still fits that theme, even with the loss of Light's Hammer, of being an absolute fucking fireworks display all the time. It's constantly doing its job. And I think that's always been a key theme and will continue to be a key theme of Paladins pretty much forever from this point. And that's why, when we did the quick look, where I was hugely, hugely critical of the spec, massively critical, my big problem was, my Paladin should be a fucking absolute Olympic opening ceremony every time I play it. That's part of the Paladin. And it has been for so long that I really don't want to lose that. Now, this is a single target fight. However, traditionally speaking, and I'm going to make a choice here, which I think is something Blizzard needs to be very aware of, is that a lot of tanks just pull this boss by accidentally, is what I want to say, like straight away. And it's very, very fucking annoying, if I'm being honest, because you don't have time to respec, and as I've said a couple of times, and I don't really intend to repeat myself, but it is worth noting is that if you don't do that, let's do a big stun on this one. Judgment. Boom. Justica's Vengeance. Ooh, didn't quite fit it in. Timed it a little bit rough, but you can absolutely... I have done it on several occasions where you fit two Justica's Vengeances on one target, and it's very cool. It's very, very cool when it happens. Just squeeze that one in. Nice. Interrupt the Tormenting Eye. Be a generally helpful, useful member of society. And help out our friends. Which is fantastic. So another guy coming in. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of things that I'm doing on my Ret Paladin that I'm not ultra sure on. Like, when we get down to... I'm going to do a big Justica's Vengeance on this guy. Judgment. Go, Hodge. Boom. Not as meaty on the level 103, unfortunately, but still, we'll survive. We'll get by. Of whether or not it's like worth using Divine Storm and stuff on 2 targets, 3 targets. Traditionally, at 2 targets, you want to switch over to Divine Storm. At one point, Divine Storm, even single target, I believe, was doing more damage than Templar's Verdict. These are alpha things. Okay. Oh, shit. No. Oh, I didn't fucking respec. God damn it. Oh, hellacious. I should have been paying more attention. Such is life when you're recording at the same time as playing, I guess. Right, so let's pop the wings. Let's start dropping some big things in. I want to waste 2 holy power. Judgment, while we're under the effects of wings. Divine Storm that way. Bit of damage cheesing for sure. But are we going to complain about it? Anybody stuck over here? No, everyone's fine. I'm actually not sure if they've changed this boss. Traditionally, those roots that you'll see up, you'll see him actually cast it. It's called Grasping Roots or some shit like that, you know. Something you've seen before anyway. Nothing you'll be surprised. Strangling Roots, I think that's it. And you'll see him travel out of the fight. I'm not sure if they changed it. It used to grip you and, like, you had to get rid of them because they did a tremendous amount of damage. I'm actually pretty sure they've changed that. Now, what you'll notice is my single target damage is fucking atrocious if you don't respec. Now, one of the issues with that's not a particular burden of the Ret Paladin, but this is more like a Legion talk in general, is that if you have something that's like a 3 or like Holy Wrath, yeah? Holy Wrath is like a 2-minute cooldown. That you can't respec. If you cast that at the end of a fight, you can't respec out of it. Similar if you use something like... If I think about Affliction Warlock, which you've already covered, if you use something like the Phantasmal Ball, which does the AoE damage, when you do something like that, then you can't respec out of it, and they really need to think about how they're going to solve that problem. Oh, I see the mechanic. Okay, they've changed them from instantly grabbing you to just like a few seconds after. Okay, so that's okay. I wonder if on the challenge runs, I've done this place on Heroic, and I'm pretty sure it's the same. as this this mechanic here. More of a curiosity for myself. Right, let's drop some big bombs. 1, 2, Ashbringer, 3, boom. 3 finishes inside the judgment window. Nice. I gotta say, I know it's a total purely subjective thing, but that new Fists of Fury animation for the Windwalkers, I am not a fan. It looks so silly to me. I like that everything's not set in stone, like traditional 6-9, 6-9 rotations that Ret Paladins or Paladins are generally fully aware of, or things like the CLC Ret. Just making choices on my judgment. I mean, Ret Paladins have had this kind of nice mechanic, honestly, which is you should maximize holy power, and that's been like the whole basis of this system. But are we going to do the extra boss? Come on. Come on. So this is a choice for the extra boss, by the way, the optional. You either go left or you go right. Looks like we're going to do the actual boss. Excellent! Excellent. I like doing the extra bosses. Makes me happy in my panties. My judgment didn't land. Alright, didn't go off. I must have pressed it in the meantime. Is that it's all just about the holy power. If you get the holy power generation right, everything else just falls into place. And we have the nice idea that it's holy power generation. You want to maximize that. Along with, of course, the judgment window stuff, which is far better than Colossus Smash for me. I mean, I would no doubt there will be some set bonuses that are like, oh my god, your judgment can reset itself, which will kind of take away some of the minor brain power needed to make it work. But it's a brain power I enjoy just spending. It keeps my rotation interesting while I'm doing things. I'm no doubt that is definitely on the cards as something that's going to be... Whoa, the FPS lag. We're at 30 FPS here. I don't know what's happened. I've never had FPS lag in this dungeon. Okay, it seems to have fixed itself. Is it looking over there? Yeah, somewhere in this dungeon is causing FPS issues, but whatever. I'm taking a little bit of damage. Let's get some big Divine Storms down. Boom. Boom. You like it? Silence everything. Gotta love being a Blood Elf sometimes. Doesn't always pay off to be a Blood Elf, but in general it does. Which is always good. Ooh, Judgment go. There we go. Now, one thing you've probably noticed that my Zeal debuff is falling off. That I could think the Zeal debuff, or the Zeal buff, I should say, the haste buff, could last just a second longer. Because there are choices to be made with the spec. And sometimes those aren't per Zeal. As much as it's a holy power generator, you can set up other cool things. And losing 50% haste for setting up the cool things, I think is a little punishing. I mean, I've no doubt it can be fixed, but... generally speaking, there are just different occasions where you're running with different levels of holy power, and it's nice not to be punished to that unfairly, especially as there are mechanics that indicate, and I could be wrong on this, I could absolutely be wrong on this, that it's not worth... Oh, my horsey works. Woohoo, horsey! Oh, we got bats now. Yeah. Don't move out of my consecration, bro. Be a friend. Yeah, just 1 second longer will be slightly less punishing than that. So those freedom to make those choices isn't like as, you know, awkward. But again, that's something I think will be cured by haste. I think haste is going to be a huge, huge cure for that. Now, I hope some of you guys are looking at this and looking at it and going, you know what? Yeah, this has got everything I want. This has got the big flashy lights that I like about Ret. It's got some pretty interesting choices to be made. And that's what more can you ask for from a basic gameplay point of view. Are the talents interesting? No, not really. That's why I'm a huge fan of Justica's Vengeance. But given how Legion is right now, there's a serious lack of very interesting talents, especially like a multitude of them. Let's see if we can respec quickly. No. Oh, no. I'm in combat. No! Don't do this to me, game. What am I in combat with? Oh, motherfucker. You're going to make me do this single target again, aren't you? Oh, please. Motherfucker. God damn it. This is the big problem with the fucking talent system, man. And Ret Paladins really suffer from it. They suffer so much. So I'm missing out on tons of shit here. I'm actually genuinely annoyed. It's the biggest frustration. As much fun as I've had with this spec, the talent system has just been a fucking burden from start to finish. It really has. Because you just can't be... If I'm not effective here, I might as well not even... Well... saying I might as well not be here is one thing, but I personally feel that way because of how ineffectual I'm being compared to what I can be. It really fucking pains me, and it'll grab onto you guys. Like, I was just stuck in combat there. I don't even know why, but you are. This is the actional boss, by the way. This is one that you might see in my video, and you'll get into some fucking group on live, and, like, nobody will be here. Nobody will do it. No, no need. I discussed in the Dark Art Thicket video itself some suggestions to trying to get this to be more exciting. or more like a reason to come here, and I hope they do something with that. So I could probably Holy Wrath while all this is going on. Holy Wrath does have some issues with it, as the cast time is very, very long. But never mind. Just the fact that I could have Execution Sentence instead of fucking Consecration. It's not as if there's ads here! Stop breathing on me, bro. If you're not sure what's happening here, actually, this is a interesting fight in that it's very Onyxia. So you can see all the eggs around here. I didn't want to go into the mechanics inside the Dark Art of Thinking video, because that's kind of non-spoilerish, but as you're clearly watching an entire playthrough of the dungeon, I assume you're not that bothered about spoilers that much, okay? So you'll see all the eggs around, then he blows you back like this, and you get blown into the eggs. And if you get them, many whelps, handle it. That's how it works. Pretty simple. Obviously, this is the normal mode version. It's not supposed to be difficult. I think that's something a lot of people need to get over, is their expectations of what they will find in a normal leveling up dungeon. You can see it's all scaled to me, so I see a level 104 boss. What have we got in here? We've got a level 100 bear, 106 monk, 100 druid, and 102 hunter. They will all see the mobs in here having different levels of HP and levels themselves. That's how the scaling system works. So it doesn't matter. Whereas it's such a great system if you think about it. If you think back to even as early as TBCs, that you would have dungeons. My mount doesn't work here. You would have dungeons that you do for leveling, but pretty soon you out level them and you never go to those dungeons again. So ramparts or whatever, you will go into there, you'll level up, and any traditional dungeon will be the same. You'll do your little bit in there. 1 second. You'll do your leveling dungeon, and then you'll get to like 2 levels after, and you won't bother. But, having said that, the new system means that I can come in here at level 100, or I can come in here at probably level 107, 106. Now, I'm not sure what's going to happen once you hit level 108. I assume you can still come in here just fine and gain experience. But the only reason I say that is the scaling system kind of changes at that point, as far as we know, when you go into Suramar. Now, does that mean that the other zones, which are High Mountain, Azuna, and so on, they will stop leveling, stop scaling for you as well? Not sure. We haven't had access to those zones yet. But Suramar, once you hit level 108, is designed so that you have to be 108 to get there, where all the other zones and leveling dungeons and what have you, they actually don't work that way. They scale up. So I don't know the exact mechanics that'll work at that point. I'm interested to see it. I'm not sure if even Blizzard's figured it out yet. Right, we're at the last boss. Can I please respec? Yes. 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 I'm going to leave Holy Wrath for now. Now, this is an interesting boss. Now, there's going to be a burst phase here. It's not ultra priority, and I tried this on the Fire Mage, and I believe I had enough time to actually go hamburgers, so we'll try it. I'm just thinking about wings in general here. So there goes wings. Templar's Verdict. Drop an Ashbringer to get a final finisher in the window. Got it. Right, he has the... So if you're being a baller, what you can absolutely do is notice... Notice who has this spinning circle on them. That means that those guys have to stay within range of people, okay? They have... That's what their mechanic is at that point. They have to stay in range of somebody, otherwise they will become silenced. So you can help them out. Try not to just fuck off and leave them to it, yeah? Try and be the guy who's okay with that. Horrified? Wow. That hurt. That really hurt. Okay, so now we go burst mode. I don't have Avenging Wrath. Now I feel like a big dick. Can I stun it? No. That's a shame. If I could have stunned it, I could have done a bit Justica's Vengeance on it. That would have been nice. It's a real shame that Justica's Vengeance has no place inside of like a single target fight. It's a real pity because it's such a cool little mechanic. I'd have really liked that. Got an excuse of sentence, but I'm going to wait for my judgment, obviously. To get that all that bonus damage. That creamy, creamy bonus damage. Oh, my excuse sentence is still dropping and it's outside the judgment window. I'm going to have to pay much more attention to that, I think. As a sort of learning note for myself there. A little side tip. I do have my... If I drop it now, I'm just going to test this. Yeah, I can get it into the next judgment here. I'm curious to see if we'll see a big number from that. Oh, it still didn't work. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Something we'll very much need to be aware of. So now I have the silencing effect on me. I agree. Let's kill this guy. Will I have I'm definitely going to have time to do my Avenging Wrath again. So I'm going to save my Wake of Ashes for that point. Some little shimmy up of holy power usage there. But you'll notice simple things like I'm spending just some time thinking about, oh, I'm going to be silenced that, so I won't be able to Divine Mount back. Oh, I did. Excellent. Fight, fight, fight. Let's pop a shield here to protect ourselves. Right, I have Avenging Wrath now, so it's going to be the next judgment that I set up the bomb. So which means the next 2 seconds I want to be able to spend... This is a cool thing, right? Pop wings. No! Come on! Fuck this. Oh, come on, man. I was just setting up the big nuke. You motherfucker. You motherfucker. Yeah, well, I got trolled. I got trolled. Whatever. Ladies and gentlemen, you're Ret Paladin Play. I hope you enjoyed that. It's not overly complex. It's busy, and it's got some nice choices to make consistently throughout your gameplay. It always shifts around, always changes, but none of them are like, this is really annoying and awkward. It needs macros and stuff like we saw with the Affliction. It's a nice spec. It's fine. It's more than enjoyable, and for anybody who liked the Ret Paladin in the past, sure, it's missing all the proc fever that it previously had. But it makes up for it in different ways, I think. There's plenty of abilities we use at different time periods. We can mix things in that you particularly want. You can speed up the spec if you wish to with Crusader's Flurry, all that kind of stuff. You can do whatever you want here, and I think I've had a good time with it. Honestly, I've had a great time with it. It's been very enjoyable. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.